so the number one mistake that authors often make when they're writing either a self-help or a spiritual teaching book is they get bogged down in telling their own personal story throughout the book. And that's a huge turnoff to readers. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure that your family would love to hear that story, your friends, but we're talking about when you go to buy a book in a self-help shelf on a bookstore, who are you wanting to help? Yourself. When you go buy a spiritual teaching book, you're teaching for tools that you can use. So I just heard a book idea that was presented to me that had some wonderful, wonderful techniques and tools, but it was presented as a journal. And so immediately in the book business, what a book retailer does and what a book publisher and also what a book reader does is to say, well, which is this book? Is this a personal story? Is this a journal? Is this a memoir? Or is it a teaching book? Because it can't be both. It can't be both. So here's what I invite you to do as an author. Absolutely, your own personal experience is what is giving you the ability to write this book, and I understand that. But remember to make it very clear that your teachings are first and that you support that with anecdotal evidence from your own personal story. As opposed to the other way, which is what I see the majority of the time, and that is we tell our personal story and then we say, and that's how I learned the lesson of X. Why don't you go do that now? And that's got it flipped. So I invite you to flip that and you'll have a much more readable and effective book. Sunny Dawn Johnson came to me, she said, okay, well, I've got my personal story, I've talked with angels, it's been a profound journey, I've helped thousands of people. And I said, Sunny, that's true and that's great, but nobody cares about your personal story. What they care about is how they can take what you've learned and apply it in their own life. And it's not that, of course, that people don't care, but you have to understand that's why we turn to self-help books. So we named her book, Invoking the Archangels, a 9-step process to heal your body, mind, and soul. Very, very clearly now tells you what that book is about. So when you think about your title of your book, you want it to be as descriptive as possible. You do not want a generic title. You do not want a feel-good title that you pulled from a line from your book. Oftentimes, it's the most difficult thing for authors to do is to title their own book. But you want it to be as descriptive as possible, and you want your subtitle to explicate your title even more and to make it very, very clear to the reader what exactly they're getting. Because remember, a book is just a piece of the puzzle in the entire business model that you have in the holistic field. A book can give you credibility. It talks about your ideas when you're home asleep, and that's what's wonderful about a book. But you want to see it in the big picture of your entire business model. Your author business model is just a subset of your overall business model of how you can be successful in the holistic and healing business. Another great example is a book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. So in that book, Byron Katie is clearly teaching you the work. The Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, the 4 steps, the 4 questions and the turnaround. However, to give it credibility, she has to support it throughout with her own personal story of what happened to her when she was living in a halfway house and was agoraphobic and didn't feel worthy enough to brush her teeth, and this spontaneous awakening that she had. So she has to tell you about that, and then she gives you examples through dialogues with others as well as her own life of how the work has come into play for her life over the next year, several years, and continues to this day. But you don't get the thought when you're reading this book, oh, this is the story of Byron Katie, because it's not. And so that's 2 examples. Now let's look at the other extreme. Eat, Pray, Love. A wonderful memoir. Clearly a memoir. Can you name another? That is how rare a successful memoir is when it comes to teaching a teaching book. We can talk about lots of self-help and spiritual teaching books by people like Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson, who incorporate their own personal story in the process of teaching, but none of us think that they've written an autobiography or a memoir. So that is the proven, I think, model, and there's reasons for that. And so that specifically, I think, would be why you would want to make your teachings very clear and then support them with your personal story, because your reader will appreciate that.